Hey everyone, and welcome. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for today's explainer, where we're going to unpack something that, let's be honest, pretty much all of us struggle with at some point: the psychology of overthinking. If you're a focused learner who loves getting straight to the core of how our minds actually work, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're going to figure out exactly why our brains get stuck in these exhausting, endless loops, and more importantly, how we can finally break that cycle of mental paralysis. Seriously, think about this for a second. Have you ever replayed the exact same conversation in your head, like 10 times over, just agonizing over whether you said something stupid? Or maybe you found yourself wide awake at 2 a.m., staring at the ceiling, vividly imagining massive problems that haven't even happened yet. Or, and this is a tough one, maybe you've missed out on an incredible opportunity. Not because you couldn't do it, but just because you hesitated and thought about it for way too long. If any of that sounds familiar, trust me, you are absolutely not alone.
Let's make this super relatable. Imagine you're drafting a text message, an important one. You type it all out, you read it once, then maybe a second time. You delete a word, you rewrite the whole sentence because, maybe it sounds a little too rude, or actually, maybe a little too desperate. So you add an emoji, then you delete the emoji. You read it again. 5 minutes go by, and guess what? You still haven't sent the text. Now imagine living your entire life exactly like this, but with major decisions. Picking a career, applying for a job, moving to a new city. Overthinking tricks your brain into feeling like every single choice is a high-stakes, life-or-death situation.
So, here is our roadmap for today's explainer to help get us out of this mess. First, we'll uncover the overthinking trap. Second, we'll take a look at your ancient survival brain. Third, we're going to unpack the myths around intelligence, perfectionism, and fear. And finally, step 4, we'll give you the actual actionable tools on how to take back control. Okay, let's dive straight into section 1, the overthinking trap, specifically deep thinking versus overthinking. The very first thing we need to do here is bust a massive myth. A lot of people kind of assume overthinking just means you're really intelligent. They think, well, smart people analyze things, right? But psychology tells a totally different story. There's a huge fundamental difference between deep thinking and overthinking. You see, deep thinking is constructive. It actually helps you solve problems and find answers. Overthinking? That's entirely destructive. It creates problems out of thin air and traps you in this endless loop of what ifs. What if I fail? What if they judge me? What if the whole thing just goes terribly wrong? These questions disguise themselves as productive analysis, but really, they're just keeping you completely stuck in a world of imaginary problems.
Which brings us to section 2, your ancient survival brain, and how we are basically running on outdated software.
To really understand why our minds betray us like this, I want to take a little bit of the guilt off your shoulders. You have to understand one basic biological reality. Your brain wasn't actually designed to make you happy. It was designed to keep you alive. Period. We are essentially running on outdated survival software. Thousands of years ago, our ancestors survived by constantly scanning for very real physical dangers. Predators, dark caves, a strange sound in the bushes. Today, we don't really face wild animals on our way to work. But our brain, it uses that exact same ancient threat detection system. So instead of a predator, it treats an unread email from your boss as a life-threatening danger. A dark cave becomes relationship anxiety. A strange sound becomes the fear of social media judgment. The danger has completely changed, but your brain's reaction hasn't. That's why a simple typo at work can bizarrely feel like the literal end of your existence. And this mental mismatch, it takes a very real physical toll on your body. When you start overthinking, scientists have found that your body literally activates the exact same stress systems as if you were in physical danger. Your heartbeat gets faster, your muscles tense right up, your stress hormones completely spike. You could be sitting perfectly safe, wrapped in a blanket on your couch, but your body is reacting as if you are sprinting away from a threat. This explains exactly why fighting these imaginary battles in your head all day is so incredibly exhausting. Let's move on to section 3, intelligence, perfectionism, and fear. These are the psychological myths keeping us trapped.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how we dismantle these traps. The first one we have to tackle is analysis paralysis. While it's true that highly intelligent people might see more patterns or possibilities, the problem happens when that analysis turns into complete paralysis. It's like standing at a crossroads. A healthy thinker looks at the left path, looks at the right path, makes the best choice they can with the info they have, and starts walking. An overthinker, they stay completely frozen at that crossroads, just evaluating over and over again. minutes turn into hours, and opportunities just disappear. And they don't vanish because you made the wrong choice. They vanish because your brain mistook all that endless thinking for actual progress, and you never even took a single step. Then we have the ultimate hidden enemy, perfectionism. So many overthinkers don't actually fear failure. What they really fear is imperfection. But here's the reality check. Perfection doesn't exist. It's an illusion. Even your absolute favorite, most critically acclaimed movie has harsh critics. Even the most successful people on the planet make huge, embarrassing mistakes. But perfectionists hold themselves to this impossible, flawless standard. They tell themselves stuff like, I'll start when I'm truly ready, or I'll put it out there when it's absolutely perfect. And because of that, brilliant ideas just stay trapped inside notebooks forever, all because they are terrified of doing something imperfectly. Another major trap is something called the spotlight effect. This is that false, nagging belief that absolutely everyone is intensely watching and judging your every single move. Imagine you're walking through a crowded shopping mall and you accidentally trip and stumble. In your head, a giant spotlight just swung right onto you, the music stopped, and the entire world is judging you. But the reality? Most people forget it within 5 seconds. Why? Because they're entirely focused on themselves. You were the main character in your own life, for sure, but you were just a background extra in most other people's stories. Honestly, realizing that can instantly lift a huge weight right off your shoulders.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why our brains cling to the negative so hard. Imagine you get 10 comments on a project you did. 9 of them are absolutely glowing, just super positive. But one is negative. Which one stays in your mind all day? The negative one, right? No contest. This is your brain's built-in negativity bias. Back in ancient times, missing a sign of danger meant death, but missing a beautiful sunset? That meant nothing. So your outdated survival software hyper-fixates on that tiny little negative sliver, completely ignoring all the amazing things that are already going right.
All right, let's get to the really good stuff. Section 4, how to take back control. Because action precedes confidence. So how do we actually escape this prison built by our own thoughts? The secret is a complete paradigm shift. You don't stop overthinking by trying to think less. Actually, scratch that. You stop it by learning to trust yourself more. Remember this, you can think forever, but your life only changes when you act. Think about when you were a kid learning to ride a bicycle. You didn't figure out how to balance by sitting inside and reading 12 books on the physics of cycling, right? No way. You learn by getting on the bike, wobbling around, falling off, and trying again. Your brain is desperately demanding total certainty before it takes action. But life just doesn't work that way. Action comes first, confidence comes later. You don't wait for the fear to magically disappear. You just simply refuse to let the fear stop you from moving. To actually put this into practice, psychologists highly recommend a surprisingly simple technique, the 5-minute rule. When you're completely paralyzed by overthinking a huge project, you can actually hack your brain's massive mental resistance by making yourself one single tiny promise. You tell yourself, I'm going to work on this for just 5 minutes. That's the whole shebang. Just 5 minutes. Let's say you want to write a book. Just sit down and write for 5 minutes. Need to get back in shape? Go exercise for exactly 5 minutes. Terrified to start studying for that massive exam? Study for 5 minutes. The honest truth is getting started is almost always the hardest part. The actual work itself is rarely as painful as your overthinking brain imagines it's going to be. By taking these tiny little micro actions, you instantly build momentum. And guess what? That momentum completely silences your big fears. So the crucial point here is that you must actively challenge your thoughts when they start to spiral. When your mind tells you, oh, everyone is going to laugh at me, just hit pause and run through these 3 steps. First, ask yourself, is this a fact or is it just my fear talking? Second, what actual hard evidence do I have to support this thought? And third, if my best friend was having this exact same worry, what would I tell them? Overthinking survives on unchecked assumptions, but it rapidly weakens and falls completely apart when you force it to face simple, objective evidence. And finally, as you start taking action, you have to internalize a critical truth. Mistakes just prove that you are human, not that you're incapable. Real growth has always looked messy. Think again about a toddler learning to walk. When they fall down, nobody criticizes them. Nobody calls them a failure. Everyone expects it. It's literally part of the process. So why in the world do we as adults demand that we succeed perfectly on our very first try? Success has always included failure. The people who actually move forward in life aren't the ones who never fall down.
They're simply the ones who keep getting back up. Which brings us to the end of our explainer today. But I want to leave you with one final, provocative question. What is one thing you have been overthinking that you are finally ready to take action on? Seriously, don't just let this be passive learning. Take a moment right now, right this second, decide what that one brave choice is going to be, and take your first step. Because every minute you spend overthinking is a minute you aren't truly living. Thank you so much for joining me today, and remember, your mind is an incredibly powerful tool. Don't let it become your prison. Catch you next time.